You know, we talk a lot about composition and color and all kinds of techniques in visual art, but what else inspires a great piece of work?
In our next story, the Colorado landscape and a Western Slopes spa resort become the perfect ingredients for quilting.
Well, here's the story from our Rocky Mountain PBS Grand Junction-based producer, Dan Garrison.
Originally, master quilt maker Katie Pasquini Masopust put her annual Alegre Retreat on the map as the happiest of places to be an art quilter.
Alegre means happy. When I started Alegre Retreat, it was in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I had just moved there and I lived on Rancho Alegre Road. So it worked for me to call it Alegre, the Happy Retreat.
And its circle of quilters were also pleased, until the day when Alegre seemed to be one of those good things that must come to an end.
We did Alegre for 14 years in Santa Fe. And then I stopped it because the convention center that we ran it in was stopping to remodel. And I just thought, okay, this is a good time. 14 years is a long time to do something. So we stopped for 3 years.
Which turned out to be just long enough for the retreat to find its ultimate resort, Gateway Canyons, built on the success of John Hendricks' Discovery Cable Channel and designed with quilts in mind by his wife, Maureen, a patron and a practitioner with a passion.
At that time, Maureen Hendricks was one of my students, and it was her favorite retreat to go to.
My kids were 11 and 9, and I'd never been away from home by myself without my husband. I just thought I'd die to go to heaven.
And she came to me and she says, "You can't stop doing this." And I said, "Well, I am."
And I said, "You know, if I ever build a resort, would you do Alegre at my resort?" And she went, "Sure, no problem."
Now, how often does someone say, "When I build my resort"? So I was like, "Sure, Maureen, you give me a call."
So then I called her and I said, "You know, my resort, we're starting a resort." And she went, "Okay."
When I first arrived at Gateway Canyons Resort and realized that this is where I was going to be running my little retreat, I was totally blown away by the beauty of the surroundings. Every view is exquisite, and to do a retreat here, I knew that would inspire the students to great heights.
Including some of the same pinnacles of the quilter's craft that Katie's already reached from her home-sewn beginnings.
I started quilting as a teenager. My first quilt was a wedding present for my sister. It was just squares and triangles.
But she was already a painter and primed to break free from the classical patterns with a little prompting by Michael James, one of the top talents in the quilting world.
I took a workshop with him and he said to me, "You're an artist. You know technically how to make a quilt. Why aren't you designing your own work?" And that was my aha moment, and I've been doing that ever since.
In her own classes that transform the time-honored three-layered bed cover of backing, batting, and decorative fabric into something infinitely more multifaceted.
Composition becomes more important in the art quilt. How does your eye travel through the piece? Where's your focal point? Your values of color? So we use a lot of the art considerations that a painter or a potter, anybody would use for the whole composition and balance.
What's great about a quilt is that you hang it on the wall and it's three-dimensional. Something about being three-dimensional just makes it speak to you better. That's how I feel about a quilt.
And Maureen's feelings are everywhere on display in masterpieces from the Hendricks collection.
I wanted to decorate the resort like I decorate my homes. I decorate my homes with quilts.
And I was commissioned to do 2 quilts for the resort. And I actually came up and plein air painted the trident that was then translated into fabric and hangs in the lobby, and also worked from some of John Hendricks' photographs of the Palisades and other formations that are in the area to make a big piece, a big triptych that hangs over the dining hall.
But as majestic and refined as the fields of fabric become, there's still great respect for the quilting custom of many hands making art work, while stitching up the unraveled seams of life.
So traditional quilt making, ladies would get together in bees and they would bring their scraps of fabric and make quilts for the community. So I was introduced to quilt making when I took some courses when I was caring for my mother, who had Lou Gehrig's disease. That's when I started making traditional quilts, because the quilters were just so supportive of a young woman taking care of her mom. When you walk in this beautiful surrounding, you're awed by God's hand. So it seems like ego leaves, and we work together with each other, we encourage each other, we make such great friends.
Every woman that has been here this week has come up to me and said, "Thank you so much for putting this on." And that makes me, I'll cry. That makes me feel really good. The camaraderie of the women that want to do this art form, the passion they have for it, like I have for it, in a place that's conducive to learning. It's just that kind of sharing that you don't get when you just sit in your studio by yourself, you know. And that's what this is about.
The annual Alegre Retreat returns in the spring to Gateway Canyons.
And that's where you can get a glimpse of fabric art collections all year long.